What's up guys, this is Preheat, and today I want to talk to you about Evoker, the new class that's coming to World of Warcraft in Dragonflight. So as of 2 days ago, Dragonflight Alpha has begun, which means that we can actually start playing Evoker, getting a feel for how the rotation works, what the talents are. I've been basically playing it non-stop, and I haven't really gotten much sleep because I've been playing it so much, but you know, I do have a pretty good understanding, I think, of the class so far, and I want to share it with y'all. I'm going to keep it pretty surface level for this video today, but if you're looking for the extended cut, I do have a written version that's going to be posted on Wowhead probably later today, so link in the description below for that. But yeah, in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with the basics. Evoker is a race-specific class, which means it's only available to the new playable dragon race. It wears male armor, and it is an intellect class. You also have a new mechanic called Empower, where basically you can charge up your spells, and depending on how much you charge them up, they do different things. And you also have a resource called Essence, which is basically something that you spend, but you can't really build up. It just passively returns to you over time, kind of like energy or like Death Knight runes. You have a ton of utility as Evoker. In fact, I'd say your utility as an Evoker is probably one of your biggest strong suits. There's just so much utility when it comes to this class, and it's all kind of new stuff that we haven't really seen before, or just like really powerful versions of stuff that we were already familiar with. Whenever it comes to playing Devastation, there's two main flavors, I'd say, whenever it comes to how you build up your talents. You can be more red focused, which is more AoE oriented, whereas you know, if you go the opposite direction, you can be blue focused, which is more single target and cleave. But regardless of whatever you build, Devastation is easy to pick up and has an underlying complexity that adds quite a bit of depth that actually makes it quite satisfying to play. Abilities feel really good to use, cooldowns feel very powerful, and you have tools for pretty much any situation. I don't know about you, but I've never really played a range that has such a short range. So, you know, I kind of expect to be able to hit things from 40 yards away whenever I play a range. You can't do that as Evoker. You have to get used to the 25 yards. It really isn't that bad though once you get the hang of it. Devastation is surprisingly polished. There's very few bugs in the alpha. I don't really want to talk too much about the bugs because you know, most of those are probably going to get fixed by the time you know, the Evoker actually is playable for everyone. But yeah, I do want to talk about this one kind of thing that I'm seeing so far. So there seems to be a imbalance between red and blue as it stands right now. And obviously tuning, you know, is going to change, right? But red doesn't really have an answer for like single target DPS, and I think that's kind of a problem. Disintegrate is kind of like how you do all of your boss damage, and if you don't have talents to boost Disintegrate, it definitely feels like you're definitely lacking in the DPS department when it comes to single target DPS. That's not to say that you can't play like a pure red build, but you know, you're going to be focusing more on AoE and cleaving in that situation, I presume. But yeah, whenever it comes to their abilities, I mean, pretty much by a baseline, Evoker doesn't really have much. You pretty much get everything from your talents, so you have to talent into the stuff to get your abilities, and then depending on which talents you pick, it vastly alters the playstyle itself. There's definitely a bunch of different playstyles, but I'm going to focus on 3 main playstyles for today, and I'll go ahead and show my talents for these playstyles, and then show you kind of how they play and give you an idea of what I'm thinking here as well. Alright, we're going to cover the talents very, very quickly. I'm not going to spend much time here, so this is basically a speed run. If you want to know more about the talents, go ahead and check out the Wowhead article. You can go look at them there, and they even have a calculator so that you can play around with them yourself. Let's get started. So, on the left side for the class stuff, you've got your own personal. You've got an insane dispel that heals. Basically, it's like a carrying pot you can use on anyone else. You've got presence of mind. You've got the ability to troll people really, really hard. You've got focus magic buff for healers that gives them mana. You've got an ability that gives everyone movement. You've got an ability that increases crowd control and also maybe removes enrages, so really, really good for raging. You've also got an ability that deals only damage to absorb shields, but it's a high amount of damage. Other stuff like a bad alter time, a heal that moves you, and then also crowd control. On the right side, the essentials are Pyre. You have to take this to move forward. You've got red and blue clear casting. These both give you essences for free. Basically essence casts, and then additional charge on that. You've got your main ability, which basically makes it so that you proc your clear casting every single time you use a filler. So that's it's basically like Killer Cobra for BM Hunter. You just alternate between filler and then damage ability. Also with Ruin, it gets the full effect of your mastery, which is you deal more damage to a target the more health that they have. So it basically pretends that they have full health. The other essential, and this one's super important, is Power Swell. This is a way to increase your essence regeneration, and it's based off of empowerment. In my mind, this is a little bit weird of a trait because it basically incentivizes always full charging, and it seems like something that you pretty much always take. It also heavily incentivizes picking the Eternity Surge, but in this case, I haven't picked it because this is the fire build. As far as capstones go, you've got Ever Burning Flame, which makes it so that basically your fire spells like Pyre in Living Flame extend the duration of your Fire Breath dot. That's going to be your primary motor for damage as this build. You've also got an ability that makes it so that you cast Living Flame much faster after you cast Fire Breath. Tyranny is going to be just cooldown reduction on your two biggest moves. That's going to be Deep Breath and Dragon Rage. And then Scintillation is going to be an ability that's primarily single target focused, but it also cleaves, or it can cleave into target if you also pick up Eternity Span. This makes it so that basically you hit twice as many enemies, which makes it so that the Eternity Surge level 1 that procs from it is going to hit an additional target. It's basically Splitting Ice, but just really, really good. Focusing Iris is damage increase, so that you just want to keep this up on your target. Charge Blast is an ability that hits really, really hard, but you have to prime it with Azure Strikes, and you can actually make it cleave as well. And that's about it. So the idea with the red side here is that you're picking up Firestorm. This is something where you just lay down fire, think of it like Flame Strike, and you're flipping out your Pyres. This is your spender for Essence. You're using your Fire Breath, and you're extending the dot on it. That's fire in a nutshell. For blue, going really fast here. For blue, you have Eternity Surge that you're going to want to use, and remember, you're going to want to charge this up because of Power Swell, and then Charge Burst, obviously. And everything else in here is just kind of focused around just dealing as much damage with Disintegrate as possible. You're using Disintegrate to spend here, right? But you're also, spinning with Charge Blast. You're being mindful to not cap essences. You're trying to keep your Power Swell uptime up as high as possible. And, obviously you're trying to get that cooldown reduction on Eternity Surge by spinning Essence. So it all kind of works together in this weird, almost like a infinity loop, right? Where certain abilities have cooldown reduction for other abilities, but you need to enable them with other abilities, and it's just this like infinite chain of stuff that needs to happen for other stuff. It's actually pretty cool, pretty fun. And then the idea with this hybrid build is basically I remove everything that's pure single target, so that's gonna just be Disintegrate related, right? And then I add in fire stuff. So I've got Pyre Explodes, I've got this ability to keep my dot up, and I play it like I play blue, right? Where I'm like Charge Blasting, I'm Eternity Surging, I'm doing all those things that I'd normally do with like the blue Cleave build, but I'm also maintaining a Fire Breath dot, right? And I'm using Pyre to spend in AoE, or Disintegrate to spend in single target. This build actually plays a lot different in AoE and single target because, obviously this is made for like kind of both. It's a little bit behind in single target, but it's definitely ahead of the red build in my experience. But yeah, this trait right here is actually really, really good. It says it's 8%, but I feel like it's more. It makes it so your Living Flame is just really, really fast. So whenever you don't have anything else going on, you've already spent your essence, you have nothing on cooldown, you can just use your Fire Breath in single target and then just absolutely spam Living Flame, and it does a ton of damage. So all in all, the talents are really, really fun. There's a lot of fun and interesting interactions here as well. And, I'm looking forward to playing all the different iterations of this because it seems like there's, pretty much just as creative as you can be, right? Like, we're obviously going to get more information down the road, and we're going to find out what the correct builds for certain things are. But it does seem like you can kind of play around with it. And in my internal testing, it seems like a lot of things are pretty close. So I think they did a pretty good job with these talents. All right, so we're starting off with the blue build. Let's talk about the basics of DPS. So number one thing is don't cap essence. You want to be spending your essence in combat. So that's why we basically pre-pull with Living Flame into Disintegrate. Disintegrate also, as this build, it applies a debuff that makes the target take more damage. So if you have that debuff, you're going to want to have it up and available for every time you're dealing damage with the big ability. After that, you have Presence of Mind or Tip the Scales. This basically makes our Empower ability instant. And we're going to be using that on Eternity Surge, which then gives us Power Swell. This brings us to rule number 2. Do not munch Power Swell. You want to basically have Power Swell up as much as you can. The higher uptime on Power Swell, the better. And the reason why is because it just gives you more essence, right? Power Swell makes your essence return faster. So that's the reason why we Eternity Surge. And then afterwards, we want to use our Charge Blast. But you can't use Charge Blast just on its own. You need to prime it with 2 Azure Strikes. Each Azure Strike is going to basically increase the damage that it does by 100%. So it's very, very important that you do that. There's also a talent that makes it cleave as well, so it's really, really strong to retarget cleave also. But yeah, so Eternity Surge, Azure Strike twice, Charge Blast, and then start charging up a Fire Breath. By the time the Fire Breath is fully empowered, your Power Swell will have fallen, and then it'll go off. And then afterwards, we're just disintegrating. We just don't want to cap Essence, right? Like, the idea is you just want to spend as much Essence as you possibly can throughout the fight, while also maintaining the debuff that your Disintegrate Beam applies, and, you know, keeping everything on cooldown as best you can. So another rule, whenever you're entering your Dragon Rage, which is your main cooldown, you want to have as little Essence as possible. You basically want to be completely cashed on Essence, and you want to come out of that cooldown with as much Essence as possible without capping, right? So Dragon Rage basically makes it so that whenever you use your little builder spell, your Azure Strike, you instantly get a clear casting proc, which makes your Disintegrate free, and you just alternate between Azure Striking and Disintegrating. Remember that you don't want to cap, right? So just keep that in mind. And, you know, you still want to be using your Charge Blast on cooldown as well. So make sure that you're priming your Charge Blast during your cooldown and still using that. As far as Fire Breath goes and Eternity Surge, I don't think that you use those during cooldowns. You're going to waste your Power Swell if you do that. But I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. I mean, I think we probably have to see Sims to know. But if you have Presence of Mind, though, you can totally cast that. The main thing is you just don't want to be locked up, you know, casting either Fire Breath or Eternity Surge during your cooldowns and just waiting and waiting and waiting, right? So definitely get those out of the way first and then enter your cooldowns while they are unavailable. And yeah, as far as other stuff goes, you know, try to have Eternity Surge on cooldown whenever you're Charge Blasting, because it does give you CDR if you have the talent for it. You know, you probably don't Dragon's Breath in cooldowns. You probably just kind of use it whenever it's available. I think that's kind of lower prio than most things, and you want to fill with Living Flame and single target. But if there's any other targets, in my mind, I think it's better to Azure Strike, even if it's just 2 targets. I mean, Living Flame is probably going to do more damage to 1 target than you do with to 2 targets with Azure Strike, but Azure Strike is also faster, and it's instant cast, and it's cooler, honestly. So anyways, that's it for the blue side. All right, so for red, I'm going to show 4 targets here, and I'm not going to talk about everything that's the same. I'm just going to mainly discuss the differences here. So obviously, right at the jump, you're going to notice that we're casting Living Flame a lot more as this build. That's because Living Flame is going to be our filler instead of Azure Strike. The reason why we use Living Flame as our filler is because it gets buffed by a lot of stuff on the left side of the talent tree, but primarily because it procs Snapfire, which is basically an instant cast Firestorm. Firestorm is basically a flame strike, but upside down. The fire's coming from the top, shooting downwards. Looks really, really cool. Does a good amount of damage, and Snapfire makes it do 40% increased damage and resets the cooldown on it. Now, you cannot hold more than 1 stack of Snapfire, so it's very easy to munch. This is why I recommend whenever you're playing this build, you know, obviously you don't want to be capping your essence, but if you can slow roll casting your essence into Pyre by just alternating casts like Living Flame into Pyre, Living Flame into Pyre, even while you're not in cooldowns, that's a really, really good way to go about doing it so that you don't accidentally, you know, end up munching one of those Snapfire procs, because that would be not so great if you did that. And then aside from that, I mean, the whole thing is kind of based off of Ever Burning Flame. We want to just keep up our debuff of Fire Breath as best we can. We extend that with Pyre and Living Flames. And we're using Tyranny to get cooldown reduction on Deep Breath and Dragon Rage. We're using pretty much all of our cooldowns on cooldown as best we can, and we're maintaining that dot while also, you know, getting as many essence abilities off and not capping essence as we can manage there. And yeah, I mean, the only other thing I'll mention here is there is still use for Azure Strike, obviously. Like, you know, you could use it in a lot of situations, but one thing that I've noticed that's really, really nice for it is just to use it at the very, very end of Dragon Rage, because, you know, you may not be able to get a Living Flame cast off in the end there. You know, the cooldown, it may have a couple seconds left, but Living Flame is a long cast, right? So if you want to just get that free clear casting at the very, very end, or Essence Burst as it's called for this class, then make sure that you just Azure Strike at the very, very end. Just get that last hit off in it. It should give you a clear casting. All right, so lastly, we have the hybrid build, and I'm going to show this on 4 targets here. This is basically going to play the same way that you would play like blue. The only difference being that instead of casting your Eternity Surge as like your #1 prio, you're going to instead be casting your dragon spell. What is it called? Fire Breath. That's the one. It's really late. Yeah, you're going to be casting Fire Breath. So Yeah, I mean, you're prioritizing Fire Breath. You're trying to keep your presence of mind to be able to use Fire Breath, like whenever you're in your cooldowns. Remember, the more pyres you get off during while the debuff of Fire Breath is up, the higher the likelihood is that it's going to carry over. Unlike the Fire build, it's going to be a little bit harder to keep it up. But if you, if you're just diligent about keeping that buff available, if you're making sure that you have a lot of essence available whenever you're casting Fire Breath so that you can unload a whole bunch of pyres into it to keep the debuff up, then it shouldn't be too much trouble to keep it up until it comes off cooldown again. And then once it fades off, try to gain some essence there beforehand, cast the ability, and then start flipping off those pyres so that you can get that debuff extended. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, it's the same as blue, right? You're charge blasting on cooldown, you're priming your charge blast, you're trying to use all of your other abilities on cooldown, you're trying not to cap essence, and you're trying to enter cooldowns with as little essence as possible, exit with as much essence as possible, and always charging to max so that you get your nice little power swell, unless you're in your Dragon Rage cooldown. And that about does it. I mean, that's really it for now. Hopefully this gives you like a good idea of the playstyle. I know I've been really enjoying Evoker Devastation, and I hope that everyone else gets to enjoy it sometime soon as well. So anyways, once again, that's it. As you can see in my background, I've edited this video throughout the night, so now the sun is coming up, which is fantastic. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, I have a lot of content planned for Evoker and for Mage and Dragonflight. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and then you'll get that content delivered to you. So anyways, thank you all for watching. Have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one. I'm gonna go to sleep now. Bye bye.